Yo, hey everybody. So in this video I'm going to demonstrate the process of disassembling and overhauling an actual freewheel. This one's a little old and crusty. It's got quite a bit of play. We'll see if maybe we can adjust that. But this isn't going to be freewheel removal. This is going to be just how to overhaul it. In this instance, I found it's typically easiest if you're going to disassemble one of these to do it while it's mounted on a hub. But before we get into that, let's just go over a little bit of differences between. Seems like there's quite a bit of confusion out there as far as the differences between an actual freewheel and then what they call a Freehub. So an actual freewheel, the ratcheting mechanism, I've got another freewheel here, and it basically, you're going to have a hub with a threaded portion that just threads on, but the ratcheting mechanism is located within the actual freewheel itself here. Pull this aside, and we've got an example here of a Freehub. So what we would have here is a series of sprockets or cogs that just slide on. There's some splined portions. One side's a little wider. That just slides on. Then you're going to have a lock ring that goes on the end there, and that threads into the inside portion of the Freehub. At least that's the most common. This is the one we're going to rebuild. This, I don't know if you can see inside of there, but you've got the long series, probably a 7/8 of an inch or so, or I don't know, maybe 20 some odd millimeters of splined area where you'll have a tool that fits into it. Same with this one, and there's a variety of different freewheels. Some are, there's like a four notches, like on an old Suntour freewheel. Some of the Shimanos, or some have two, and then some of the old Shimanos, it's a smaller splined inset where you have to pull all the bits out to get the tool in. Most of these, that tool will just fit right over your existing lock nut and all this other stuff. But what we're going to really focus on today is two little divots here and here, and that's basically a little lock ring there that you would want to disassemble this. And I'm just going to go ahead and take the axle nut and washer off. Set those aside. And the threads on this thing they're going to be reversed, so we're going to go in a clockwise motion to loosen this thing off. Probably a good idea to shoot a little penetrating oil. I've just got some WD-40. That's what I got on hand here. We can get a little bit of this in here. It's threaded on this inner circle here. So basically, there are spanner wrenches, but they're really just not deep enough, and these are usually locked on so tight that those are pretty ineffective. So what I'm gonna do is just rest that like so. Like we got it loose there a little bit. There we go. And from here we're just gonna so at this point, make sure you're keeping a nice downward pressure on the cogs as we take this out of here. So we're loose. We've got a magnet or something. This is not super powerful. This is a little more robust. There we go. So we got our ring. That's basically just a bearing race. Pretty rusty and crusty. We'll set that aside, and then you can see now there's the top layer. These are just a bunch of 1/8 inch ball bearings. Put this here, and I'm going to kind of just tip it up, let just gravity kind of pull some of these over to the little tool here. If you get something long and skinny, that's going to be your best bet. We can get the majority of these out. There's about 5 left in there, but alright, so we got the remainder of those. Stick those in my little tray. Alright, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and, we don't want to just pull this straight up, or we're going to have, there's another round of ball bearings on the other side. So what I'm going to do, got all this side on this little magnet, so I'm going to set that aside. Going to take my little magnetic tray and I'm going to put it on this side. I'm still holding the freewheel down. So I'm just lay that over. Alright, so I was able to flip that over and keep, there's a few that went down in the bottom, but the majority of the bearings stayed in the little groove. But we can go ahead and just, we'll go ahead and just put these on down in here. So we can kind of clean all this up. There we go. Alright, so there's our, that's our basic freewheel body. You can see the little teeth on here. Alright, so through the bearings roll on the inside edge. And we've got our little paws here. There's a little, if I pull this outwards, or actually let's get to that part just a minute. So we've got a little, there's going to be a shim stack here. So we've got one that's really thin. This one's pretty thin as well. Then we got a couple thicker ones. So yeah, I think that's all of them. So what we can do to get that wobble out, we can remove one of these really thin. I mean, that's paper. That's so thin. It's, you know, I'm going to remove one of these and we'll kind of trial and error, see where that gets us when we get to that point. So we got our little paws here, and there's basically just a little circular spring and it connects here at the top. So if I pull out on this, you don't want to pull on it super hard and damage the spring. There we go. Got our other paw. So it's just a little small little clip there. So got our 2 paws, got our freewheel body. That part's just threaded onto the hub there. So I'm going to take this thing off while we're here. It's already so old, the plastic is just breaking away. So I'm going to ditch this thing while we've got all that off. All right, so at this point, I'm just going to clean it up. Actually, I'm just going to use the same WD-40 to just wipe this down as best we can. And we're just going to repeat the process with all these the 2 little paws here, all the components. We want to get the insides of our freewheel body here. Just make sure all those bearing races are nice and clean, or as clean as we can get them. Same for the teeth. I mean, you can see how it's just rusty and corroded. Looks like it got some, this bike probably sat out in the weather. You can see there's quite a bit of rust and stuff in there. We're just gonna clean this out as best we can. However much time you want to put into it, clean it, that's really up to you. I'm just kind of doing the demonstration on, I'm not going to worry about getting this thing immaculate. Just clean it up and put it back together, re-lube it up. Okay, so we got all our bits and pieces cleaned up. Got the bearings separated. These were from the lower end, these are from the upper end. I don't know if we have the same amount, but I don't know. I didn't even count them or any of that, so you can keep them separated. It doesn't really matter. They're all there and you didn't lose any. So a couple things to check on the little spring that holds the paws. What will happen over time is these will get little spots worn in them, and you'll lose some of the spring tension. These don't want to pop up as easy, so you'll get slippage and stuff. This spring seems, I can feel a little bit of wear on them, but I think it's acceptable. You know, other than corrosion, there's not a lot of wear and tear on this. So basically we're going to use just some grease to kind of hold the bearings in place. And I've got just the oil I had on hand, some Bow Shield T9. So anyway, I went ahead and put a little, this tub underneath here as we're going to reassemble this, so we can get all our, in case any of the bits fall, it's not going to go rolling away on us. Got everything cleaned up and ready to reassemble. So we got these little pockets here, and that's where this deeper groove is. And that's where the these little paws are going to go. It's going to sit in there just like so. We've got this little edge on the top here. That's where our shim stack is going to go, and that controls the how you adjust these bearings, because there's really no way to adjust them otherwise. It's just you lock the ring down, and then there's the two sets of bearings there that you adjust from there. So anyway, what we're going to do first, let's go ahead and just put we got our little spring clip here, and there's this part right here. That spring can't go all the way through, so that's this open end is going to go. Let's just go ahead and put our spring on. And so you want it to be all the way in these grooves. It's going to butt right up against the edges there. So we're going to first put one of these little paws in here. What I'm going to do is just pop this out here just a little bit. Slide that under, and then if we slip that little edge of the spring up, then boom, it engages. That's how that thing pops out. So when you're coasting, the teeth are popping back that way, but then as soon as you drive the gears, that pulls and holds it in place there. So got one side. Some of these are going to have 3 paws, or I don't know, this particular freewheel has 2 paws. Same thing, we're just going to work that in, and once that spring goes into this little groove or this little slot, so those are ready to go. What we're going to do next is, you can see this kind of the wear mark, this polished silver portion where the bearings are going to ride. What we want to do is form a nice pocket of grease all the way around. I'm just going to put a few little kind of blobs on here. Kind of like so. And I'm just going to want that kind of a consistent height all the way around. Go. Doing this just, you know, for one, for lubrication, but 2, just to hold these bearings in place. So we got our nice cleaned up bearings. We're just gonna stick them right there where the groove is. So some guys will use tweezers. I don't know, I just usually like to put them in by hand. Again, we got our bucket here to catch them if they fall down on us. Put them in a couple, 2 or 3 at a time if you want. Alright, so we got all those guys in. I'm going to put a little some oil here on our little paws. And then we've got our shim stack. We got the 2 thicker shims. And then we've got the super paper thin one. And again, I left one of these out, and that's just because we had that little bit of excessive movement on our the bearing adjustment on our freewheel, so leave one out. We may end up taking the second one out as well. And just off camera, I've already got this, my bearings basically the same thing as doing these lower ones. We're just doing it, putting some grease, putting the bearings on this upper end of the freewheel. I'll put a little of this oil on the, just kind of on the teeth here. Normally you want to put oil more or less on the teeth part and the, I don't know. So I'm just going to place this over, and then we're going to back it in just like that. So you can see our ratcheting mechanism's working there, and so now we're ready to put this the little locking ring on. And you know, this thing again, it's the threads are backwards. We're going to go counterclockwise to tighten it. This part's a little tricky getting it started. You want to have it as square as possible. Basically, we're just going to turn that down, basically till it stops. We still got quite a bit of slop in there, so just going to tighten that up to the point of, I mean, there's still quite a bit. And you want to have a little bit of slop, but not, that still feels, that's about, it's not really going to get any tighter than that. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. There we go. And I'm going to take one of that other thin shim out of there. This part can be a little bit tricky. Don't necessarily want to take the bearings out, but I kind of push down and it's getting that one end of it to pop up. There we go. Might be able to get that with my magnet. There we go. Got one of the real thin ones. All our bearings are still in place, so take that one out, try it again. Again, just hold that nice and square. Went on for us pretty easy this time. Yeah, that's better. Still got just a tiny touch, but it's better than what it was. Got that down in there, locked in place. So yeah, that's basically it. It's a little quieter. If you want it louder, you can use thinner oil. If you want it thicker or quieter, you can just grease the whole thing up. You know, sometimes with the grease though, if that spring's not powerful enough, you may get to where that wants to slip. But that's definitely smoother and, you know, a little nicer, better than it was. A lot less play in the, got a little bit, you don't want it so tight that it locks up or has a lot of stiction there or excessive amounts of friction, but that's, say for this inexpensive Falcon freewheel, that's pretty well acceptable. So at this point we're ready to bolt it back up onto the bike and go. Okay, just for a quick clarification, this is a freewheel. Type of hub that a freewheel will use has a threaded end piece on here, and then the axle, depending on how many speeds, that can stick out further. That's basic freewheel. It's threaded on the inside here, bolts onto the hub. You need a freewheel tool that engages into those splines to remove the freewheel from the hub. And then this is a cassette, or a set of cassette sprockets or cassette cogs. You've got a cassette lock ring tool. There's a few different variations of these. Cassette lock ring fits in there to remove that. This would be a rear hub with a free hub. So you got your cassette cogs, free hub goes on, lock ring locks it into place. Yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.